What's up, Slack fam? Welcome to part 5 of the How to Slackline series. Today we're going to be going over gear. I'll be discussing exactly everything you need to rig a long line in the park. If you watched my last video, I kind of had a very brief introduction to long lining. And today we're going to be going over all of the gear you need so you can actually rig one of the lines like the one you saw me on in the last video. So the very first thing, and you should already have these, but you should always use tree protection. If you followed the last buying guide on how to buy a primitive kit, you should already have something. You could use towels if you don't want to waste money. You could use an old t-shirt. Just make sure you're using something to protect those trees. Just anything, really. The very next thing you're going to need, and you should also have this if you've been rigging primitive lines, is something to anchor. Now, as always, I will always recommend static rope because it's so versatile. You can use it for many different types of anchors. You can later use these to rig high lines off bolts. I really recommend static rope. You can go on animatedknots.com where they can teach you basically every knot you would ever need to know to make anchors with this stuff. It's great. I highly recommend it. But if you've already got slings or something else from your previous kit, don't buy static rope. Just use what you've already got. The very third thing you need, and this will be one of the most expensive things depending on how long you want to go, is webbing. You need webbing, enough webbing to rig a long line. So how much webbing do you need? Well, that is really entirely up to you. All I recommend is that you get sewn loops on your webbing. That way you can connect it to other pieces of webbing if you want to go longer. And the consensus here in the USA is that people are getting 50 meter or 60 meter length sections. Me personally, I like 50 meter sections, but you can do whatever you want. So get some webbing, make sure it's low stretch webbing so you can rig it at length in the park. Basically stay away from nylon webbing. Just get yourself some polyester webbing. I recommend 2 50 meter pieces. 100 meters is a really long length in the park, and it'll get you training for a really long time. So webbing, that's the third thing. We've now got SafetyPro, anchor material, and webbing. Those are the very basics. This is going to be a new piece of gear that you would not have used before for your primitive setup, and that is a soft release. So soft release is essentially made up of 2 steel shackles and a piece of webbing. And if you look closely, this is a really garbage piece of webbing. You really don't need anything super crazy strong or expensive. Literally any piece of webbing will do. And if you look in there, I just have mine tied in a knot. And that's what I've been doing for years now, and it's working really well. You don't need to spend $50 on a soft release. You can get a cheaper piece of webbing, and 2 shackles probably cost you $20 to $30. So soft release, and I will go in depth in another video on how to actually correctly make one of these, because I have seen a soft release used incorrectly probably the most times in a slackline rig, and it's really frustrating sometimes. So I'm going to go into an entire video on soft releases later in the future. So now if we go all the way to the other side of the webbing, we need something to hold our tension, yet we need to be able to tension through this device, and that is a web lock. I've got the Alpine Web Lock 4.0 here. It really doesn't matter what web lock you get, they all do the same thing. This one's just my personal favorite. It's really nice and big, got a giant rigging hole so I can fit a lot through there. But you need a web lock of some sort so you can put your webbing in and tension through it. Now we need something to actually tension our line. And so we're gonna need some sort of pulley system that will be able to pull tension. And now there are many options when it comes to pulley systems. I actually have 3, and I'm gonna show you all of them. But depending on what your needs are, how long you're going, how high you're rigging your lines, how many people you have to help you pull, is really gonna depend on what you want. So I'm gonna go over my first one. the hangover system. So I really like this kit. It's very straightforward. It uses one soft rigging plate and 2 hangovers to give you a 5-to-1. This third hangover is used for multiplication, so I can get a 15-to-1 with this system. Now, it is not the most efficient system because the diameter of the bearings is really small, so you lose a lot when your webbing goes through there. But it is really nice because it's really lightweight and really small, fits pretty much anywhere. But it also is quite expensive. Each hangover is about $40, and this ends up running you close to $150 to $200. So not too bad, but also not the greatest and not my favorite. This one I like for smaller lines, like 50 to 70 meters in the park, where I have 1 to 2 friends to help me pull. That's really the only time I'll use this. Or if I'm out rigging a high line that requires a little more tension, I'll use the 5-to-1 over the 3-to-1. But that is really rare because sag is swag nowadays and we don't really rig our high lines with a lot of tension. That brings me to my second and least favorite pulley system of them all, and that is the 3-inch SMCs with an eddy brake, just like you see here. Now, these are awesome because they're really powerful. You can get a lot of power out of them. It's also a 15-to-1, just like the last pulley system, but these are much more efficient. The obvious reason why I don't like them, they are huge, they are heavy. I never want to lug these things anywhere, and they are quite expensive as well. I believe I got each of these pulleys used for $60 a piece. This rope I also bought used for about $60, and then the eddy I also bought used for $50. So this thing ran me about $200 to $250. Yeah, it's not my favorite. We'll just leave it at that, but they work, and these are kind of one of the OGs of the pulley systems around in the market. So, you know, they work. So let's move on to my personal favorite pulley system. And my personal favorite is the Rad Slacklines BLNC 5-to-1 or 25-to-1 with this really awesome double pulley multiplier that they include. Full disclosure, I am sponsored by these guys, but I am not just saying that I like these because of that. I really do. These kind of combine the best of both worlds for the other pulleys. They're as efficient, actually more efficient than the 3-inch SMCs, and as light, a little bit heavier than the hangover pulley system. And I can get way more mechanical advantage with these because there's a double pulley here instead of a single, so I can get 25-to-1. Just last weekend, actually, I was able to rig a 110 meter long line in the park using these by myself, and I didn't even have to use the 25-to-1. It was just the 15-to-1 with a single multiplier. So really nice. These things don't weigh anything. See, I'm holding them up with one finger here. Highly recommend these pulleys here. So I'll drop a link for these down below. They are freaking awesome. The only thing I wish was better, sometimes the rope gets jammed up in this little teeth here, and it sounds a little scary at times when you're pulling it through. It sounds like it's kind of getting jammed. But other than that, these are awesome. So that's just kind of my take on 3 different pulley systems. You go with what you need, but I like the Rad Slacklines ones because you can pull really long lines by yourself. If you've got a lot of friends to help you pull, I really recommend you get the hangover pulley system, but under no circumstance do I really recommend the SMCs. They're just outdated. They're not the best. That is technically all you need if you want to hard point a long line. Now, I gotta talk about that a little bit really quick before I move on here. There are 2 ways you can rig a long line. You can hard point it or you can soft point it. Now, hard pointing essentially just means that you leave your pulleys in the system, and you can't actually hard point with the hangover pulley system, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So if you're gonna hard point, you need to either get the SMCs or some sort of actual pulleys that can clip directly into the web lock and be left in the system. Now, I don't mind hard pointing. I do it all the time with specific rigs, but there are advantages to soft pointing, which is when you're able to completely remove the pulleys from the system. So I'm gonna go over very quickly, very briefly, pros and cons of each. So hard pointing, if you hard point, you technically do not need a soft release because your soft release is built into your pulleys. You pull tension in with the pulleys, and once you're done, you just release whatever brake mechanism you have on your pulleys and you're done. Now, it is much harder to walk a slackline when you have pulleys embedded into the system because there's a weight just kind of moving back and forth at the end right there. Soft pointing, you need your soft release and you need one extra piece of gear. Now, this piece of gear is quite expensive, but it is 100% worth it, and every real highliner or longliner owns one of these, and that is one of these bad boys. This is called a line grip. So the way this works, this goes on the end of your pulley system here, other end of your pulley system attaches to your anchor, and this thing actually goes around your webbing. It's just this plate, and literally the way it works, it's a 4-bar mechanism that when you look here, it's loose, and when you look here, it just tensions it up and grips your webbing and pulls slack out of it. Now, once you pulled slack out, you can pull it through the web lock because it's loose, and then when you release your pulleys enough, this line grip just goes slack and you can remove the pulleys. So, if you're on a budget, don't buy a line grip. Hard point your webbings for a while, it's okay. But if you've got the money, I highly recommend you buy a line grip. Now, there are other types of line grips on the market. They're making smaller, more affordable ones like the wafer or the snatch. Now, if you're gonna long line, I really do not recommend those pieces of gear. They just don't hold the 15 kilonewtons that a line grip can hold. I've seen them slip. I know of friends that have actually had their webbing break somehow while using the smaller devices. Now, I don't personally own one of those devices because I've had a line grip for many, many years now, and it has done me really, really well. So I am a little biased, but line grip if you can afford it, hard point if you cannot. So that is really all the gear you need to rig a longline in the park. I know it's a lot more gear, but this is all gear that you can basically use for highlining when you're ready to go highline. So it's a good investment if that is your goal. So that's everything. In the next video, I'll be showing how to actually go out and set up one of these long lines because it is quite different than setting up a primitive rig in the park. So if that sounds interesting and if that sounds like something you want to do, hit those buttons below, hit the like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss whenever I post. I'm going to try to put something up every other week, if not every week. It just depends on my schedule. And I hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching.